Who here likes a pretty garden? Who here likes something that's pretty and pretty functional? Hey everybody, Doug CrocGardener here. Today I'm going to talk about some flowers that I'm planting in my garden. Last year was the year that I told myself that I am going to try to get more flowers into the garden. And I feel like I successfully did it. I didn't overdo it like I typically try to do. I didn't overdo it. I didn't underdo it. I think I just hit it about just right. So you might ask, Doug, why do you plant flowers in your garden? Well, I will tell you, one, the flowers definitely bring in the pollinators. And those pollinators are good for your vegetables in terms of spreading the pollen around and getting more fruits or whatever you want out of your vegetables. That really, really helps produce a larger yield. The other thing is that they bring in some beneficial insects, like your assassin wasp, different things that will attack some of the other insects that are in your garden that are causing some harm. And the last reason why I like to have flowers in the garden is that it makes me want to get out in the garden. I spent a record year out in that garden, whether it be filming or picking or weeding or just out there meandering around with a glass of wine or beer, or probably a lot of times with coffee in the mornings. I was out there because I wanted to be out there. Those flowers made it a very, very enjoyable place for me to be out there. Now, I got a good sense of beauty, a good sense of zen, a good sense of relaxation whenever I was out there. And those flowers did play a huge part on that. I could sit and I could just watch the hummingbirds fly around. I could watch the butterflies. I could watch the bees. It just was a good place for me just to go out there and throw away whatever went on that day, throw it out of my mind, and just focus on here and now. So that probably is the ultimate reason why I put the flowers in the garden. It really helps with that. The other ones are just beneficial. So what are some things that I do plant in the garden? Number one thing I like to plant in the garden is probably my sunflowers. This year, I said last year I didn't go crazy, but this year we are going to go crazy with several different varieties of sunflowers. I got several different colors of sunflowers. Last year we grew the giant ones from Baker Creek. They were huge. They were tall. The Mongolian Giants is what they were called. We'll probably do some gray stripe sunflowers. I got some Henry Wild, some Arkincara, I can't say it, some Mexican Red Torch, and some chocolate cherry sunflowers here. Those will be all fantastic for the garden. The other thing I like to do is plant a lot of flowers that are going to be good for the soil, that bring in some beneficial nematodes and different things like that. Calendulas are going to be good for that. Marigolds are going to be good for that. This is a new variety, this Burning Embers. I'm going to really enjoy this one. It'll be interesting to see how this one turns out. Moving on, another flower that I love to grow, and this one really makes Mrs. CrocGardener happy, is the zinnias. Those zinnias, you go out there, the more you cut, the more they grow. The more I cut, the more that goes in the house. That makes beautiful bouquets. The more Mrs. CrocGardener loves my garden, which is a good thing. So the other thing I grow in the garden will be a Chinese wallflower. I've had these in the garden before. I've never tried them as a tea, which you're supposed to do. But that is another point that is good with some of these flowers are edible and they use for medicinal purposes. So the culinary / medicinal factor is great in there. I do also love this one. I grew this one for the first time last year. This is Alyssum, carpet of snow. It is a low-lying plant that I just typically planted on the outside of my bed and would dangle over. This guy would bring in all those little beneficial bugs, like the hoverflies and the assassin wasp. They would bring all those bugs in there that would help repel pests. This guy was excellent for that. Something I'm going to try new this year are some different types and colors of flowers. The Fuji blue flower I mentioned earlier in another video. I'm gonna try this. It should be a good pollinator. I have several of them, like the Gaillardia artista, the catchfly, the Coreopopus plains. Sorry if I mispronounce these. I have a bachelor button. Oh, and another one that is not in the flower box. It's more or less in the herb box that I typically plant is chamomile. Now that chamomile I did for a fact this year, I did take that chamomile. I harvested them all, the little itty bitty flowers, pulled them all off, put them in the dehydrator, dried them out, and this winter I've been I've been drinking chamomile tea all winter long. It's been fantastic. If you ever haven't grown chamomile, you got to. Those things grow like, for me, they grew like weeds once, but they were done once the heat hit. But when it was in the spring, early spring, they were growing like weeds. I had so many volunteers of those come up as well. Those guys produced a bunch of little flowers, which then again produced a bunch of pollinators and beneficial insects to my garden. And then they produced all those little flowers I was able to take off and make into that tea. All those flowers smell a lot like little apples, and I am a huge apple fan. So that tea, to me, is one of the best tasting teas I've got. Here's yet another new one I'm going to grow is this Fairy of Snow. It's a balloon flower. It's basically a white flower, grows about 10 inches tall. So we're going to get all these into the ground. So a lot of these flowers are going to be 8 to 6 weeks that you plant out. So what I typically do is I go back from my last frost date. I want to figure out whenever that last frost date is, when is this thing going to bloom? So I might add a week or two onto that 8 or 6 weeks from that last frost day. See how long it germinates. Maybe add another week on for that. So I usually tend to sow these way before that 8 to 10 weeks. It might be 13 weeks when I start sowing some of these. I don't know if that's the proper way of doing it, but that's what I do. Don't take me for that because you guys may be planting these way too early if you do that, but that's just what I like to do. I like to have things ready to go. I have plenty of space out here in my grow room, so things can grow quite tall and roomy. I can pot them as many times as I need to, so I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. If you guys like what I'm doing out here, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, leave me a comment down below. What flowers are you guys planting? You guys got anything in your garden that you typically plant every year, year after year after year? Do you plant any flowers at all? Are you going to start planting flowers this year? Some things to think about. Hit that subscribe button. Cheers, everybody. God bless.